The fact is that, at Olympic finals, for instance, at Olympic finals, for instance, we're not talking to media, and there's hundreds of people gathering around, as opposed to the start of a race in the Olympic Games when it's just quiet and it's just you by yourself and your brain and everything that you've learned. And if you don't do anything, it's over.
Amazing. Donovan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Lovely to meet you. Yeah, some of those speeding tickets, as you said,
exactly.
were golden and had a ribbon on there as well. Right, let's have a look further down the grid, because the McLaren, tell us the story about the McLaren front wing, because they brought a new front wing, couldn't make it work, didn't really understand it, and have gone to the old one. This is so unlike a team for McLaren, who bring parts and they work up to this point.
Yeah, we speak so much about how good McLaren is at upgrading the car, and McLaren brought some of their upgrades.
Bring parts and they work up to this point.
Yeah, we speak so much about how good McLaren is at upgrading the car, and McLaren brought some of their upgrades to Miami and then some of them here this weekend for Canada. Now, the front wing that they ran during P1, they took off. We've seen lots of images with that front wing on there with the FlowViz on it. We also seen a lock-up for Oscar Piastri that he had on that wing because it wasn't returning well enough.
Yep.
And that FlowViz is probably what gives them the indication that they're not going to be happy with that front wing for the race. And it's more than likely because the airflow showing on that FlowViz doesn't match what they expect from the wind tunnel or from CFD, and that's why they'll have reverted to the older one that they've got more knowledge on. It's not for the bin, the new one.
Okay.
They'll learn about it. They'll maybe probably run it in P1 the next time we go out, and they'll continue to build the data and see if they can improve.
Okay, this photo I'm going to call Oscar among the daisies. The dandelions. They're not daisies,
Dandelions,
are they? The dandelions. Oscar in the dandelions. We've still got dandelions on the side of the track. I love it. Anyway, he's focusing. I won't bother him with plant. The dandelions. They're not daisies, are they? The dandelions. Oscar in the dandelions. We've still got dandelions on the side of the track. I love it. Anyway, he's focusing. I won't bother him with plant-related trivia. But what about the Ferraris then? Let's just move back to the back of the grid. About the Ferraris then, let's just move back to the back of the grid. And about the Ferraris then, let's just move back to the back of the grid. And with the Ferraris, no upgrades, they're still understanding it. But wow, this is a weekend where Lewis Hamilton, always gone well here, has made the difference. And Leclerc struggling with the braking, which is, again, unusual for him.
Unusual for Leclerc to be struggling with the brake, and that's normally a complaint that we hear more from Lewis Hamilton. I'm so impressed with the Ferrari, actually, for something that didn't
180-degree wing. We've seen the Red Bull with that amazing 180-degree wing where it turns, but little things that you notice, Kieran, come around this side, that the FIA puts a little hologram on every part to make sure that it's the same one. And then you saw FIA standard, that's the disco lights on the side. You won't notice it here in Canada, but it's the kind of thing we notice on the grid.
it's a lot, and that's a great thing about it. And it's actually really nice that the Ferrari mechanics don't have any of the tensor barriers around the car that some of the other teams do, so you can get really, really close to the two Ferraris.
Yep. Here is Max Verstappen, who gave his clearest indication earlier this weekend that he's going to stay long-term in Formula One. He's on board with the way that Formula One is going, to be less dependent on the battery in terms of 50-50 split with the engine, and equally with the engine and the turbocharger.
Yeah, and I just want, Kieran, if you just show the cover that they've got in the cockpit, they're just taking it off now. All of these teams have slightly different ways of keeping the cockpit and those engine cool pre-race. Even though it's not that hot and sunny here, they're still trying to keep the driver's seat, the fuel that's in the fuel cell in there, they're all trying to keep it pre-race. Even though it's not that hot and sunny here, they're still trying to keep the driver's seat, the fuel that's in the fuel cell in there, they're all trying to keep it pre-race. Even though it's not that hot and sunny here, they're still trying to keep the driver's seat, the fuel that's in the fuel cell in there, they're all trying to keep it pre-race. Even though it's not that hot and sunny here, they're still trying to keep the driver's seat, the fuel that's in the fuel cell in there, they're all trying to keep it as cool as possible, just as Lewis zooms past us.
But we're going to have to get a zoom. And okay, it might be towards the back with a lot of people starting from the...
Not so many points on the board. It is a good opportunity to get another long run test in ahead of qualifying this afternoon.
It's George Russell with Rachel Brooks.
George, a quick one. What's going to stop you winning this race today? Nothing, right?
Control what I can control. Thank you. You know, make a step forward compared to the previous races. Obviously, McLaren have been making great starts recently, but I'll control what I can control. Thank you.
Right, get set. Mercedes locked out the front row. Sprint is next. Right, get set. Mercedes locked out the front row. Sprint is next.
Audi sponsors Formula One on Sky Sports.
With the football this summer at Currys, we've seen a surge in people who've got stuck choosing new TVs.
Help! I was explaining.
Football this summer at Currys, we've seen a surge in people who've got stuck choosing new TVs.
Help! I was explaining.
Football this summer at Currys, we've seen a surge in people who've got stuck choosing new TVs.
Help! I was explaining the difference between brightness and contrast.
Shh, don't blame yourself.
She needs Hisense U7Q Pro Mini LED with sports mode for flawless motion.
Do you say that, son? Do you?
What are you playing that for?
Chrissy, no one ever wins.
I did.
Apart from her.
We did.
Apart from them.
It was me, and it could be you.
Hold up.
Well, what makes you so sure?
I just have this feeling that...
It could be you.
Keep watching.
Welcome back, taking you through the action for the sprint this afternoon. Ted Kravitz in the pit lane. Bernie Collins stationed in a natural environment on the pit wall. Up in race control, Karun Chandhok talking through the action. Martin Brundle and David Croft. Are you feeling the need for speed? Here we go then. It's time for the Montreal Sprint.
Steven Dubois, sprint skater. I'm really trying to be aggressive and be ready to take some risks when I go out on the ice. What I enjoy about sprinting is the feeling of speed. We're living on the edge of 1mm blades. The thrill about speed is the danger. My family really liked to follow me a lot in competitions. I felt like winning with them in the stands was special for me. You have to have the killer mindset and try to be super aggressive. Feels kind of high pressure, super excited and pumped, and I know I'm in the right place for a race. Always try to be unpredictable. You want to defend and attack 2 moves or 3 moves you can do in a race. You have to have a deeper entry and then adjust your track. There's no bigger thrill than going fast on blades.
setup will be all over the place, I'd have thought, just throwing on a suspension piece like that. But they'll be desperate to learn some things. 23 laps, short, but hopefully very sweet too. Now, history says this year so far, the third row of this grid, the Ferraris are fastest off the line. Next fastest have been the McLarens in front of them, and the two Mercedes on the front row have struggled. So that, history suggests, will be a lot of cars arriving at the same time down into the first corner.
And already, George Russell on pole, pointing to the right-hand side. I would imagine that's going to be replicated when we get going for real. Starting tyres, it's a free choice, and it is quite a mixture. Arvid Lindblad, P9 on the grid, starts on the hard compound tyre, according to our data. The majority on the mediums, Perez and Stroll due to start on the softs, along with Valtteri Bottas. Are you surprised a few more haven't taken the gamble to go on the softs? Because tyre degradation hasn't been much this weekend.
It hasn't, but I think they really want to keep as many as they can for qualifying this afternoon here on Montreal time. So, yeah, I think they know they can lean able to get 2 really fast laps out of the soft tyre, so everything's quite durable. It's a low grip surface, as George Russell working hard to generate some tyre carcass and tyre surface temperature, and a long way in front of everybody.
I was going to say, all that temperature generation might come to nothing, given that he's going to be waiting for quite a long time, because whilst his teammate is a fair way behind, so are the rest. That's Lewis Hamilton starting 5th, making his way to the hairpin. George Russell's halfway down that back straight.
Yeah, it seems as if the Ferraris also, they've got a good way of warming up their front tyres in particular. Karoon at Sky Race Control.
Yeah, just listening into Kimi Antonelli's team radio, he's obviously struggled with starts this year, Crofty. Pete Bonington telling him your clutch target was on point. So hopefully he will get off the line better than he has so far this season.
It's an amazing stat, isn't it, for a team that have a 70-point advantage in the Constructors' Championship and a 20-point advantage with one teammate over another in the drivers. They haven't led the opening lap this season.
No, they've lost more places, but you tend to at the front. You're always going to gain more places if you're at the back more often than not. So George sort of scooping the pack up a little bit now, but both Mercedes left to 2 11s of black Pirelli rubber when they left the dummy grid. So we'll see. What matters is how they get away now. But it's 142 metres down to the first braking point. But it's all on a curve anyway. It's a very tricky start here in Montreal.
It certainly is. Max Verstappen, what can he do to make up places? What can they do at Aston Martin to try and get Lance Stroll into this race? Well, he'll be starting from the pit lane if he's starting. At least they've now actually got the tyres on, still in their blankets, and it might be that they're going to try and send Lance Stroll into this. If nothing else, it's a good test session for what's to come later in the day.
I was expecting a lot of this with these fundamental changes of 26 cars, to be honest. A lot of these problems.
Right, we're all lined up on the grid. The 5 are making their way to the end of the pit lane to start. We've actually got a green flag, and we can have the pre-start procedure where the drivers are allowed to build up their revs.
George is extreme and is pointing to the right-hand side, isn't he?
There's 2 Mercedes are going to meet somewhere in the middle here. Sprint race, Montreal, lights out, away we go. And Russell does get away well. Antonelli maybe a little bit slower, but he's covered off Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. And under pressure there, the McLaren with Lewis Hamilton go around the outside of Piastri and now trying to get on terms with Norris. Piastri will fight that back as Russell leads from Antonelli. The McLaren has been passed by Lewis Hamilton. Oscar Piastri has dropped a place already. We see a few skirmishes at the back, but they're all clean and through.
Yeah, absolutely. So perfect starts from both Mercedes. Russell particularly getting away well, and that scuppered the early chances of, say, Ferrari. But we've seen Lewis very quick in that first sector so far in this event, and it's paid dividends with a place on Oscar Piastri.
It certainly has. There's George Russell leading from Kimi Antonelli. The Mercedes making a little bit of a gain there on the McLaren of Lando Norris in 3rd. Then Hamilton and Piastri, Leclerc, Verstappen, Hadjar, Lindblad and Sainz, the top 10. Points down to 8th as down the inside goes the Haas there of Esteban Ocon on Sergio Perez. Fernando Alonso is lying in wait behind the Cadillac, and now we we see Antonelli making up a lot there on George Russell down that back straight, and the Mercedes almost fighting, almost an opportunity for Antonelli into the final chicane.
Stroll is out on racetrack. He did get out into the race, albeit quite a long way at the back at the moment.
Someone's gone through the chicane and the distance there as we see down towards turn one, an overtake going on. This was Nico Hülkenberg earlier on in the lap. I think that was Pierre Gasly trying to make an overtake a little bit earlier, and Hülkenberg with the Alpine on his right-hand side forced off into the grass. That would have been Colapinto that he was battling with. Antonelli trying to get back on terms with his teammate George Russell. The stewards are going to have a look at Lance Stroll for a starting procedure infringement. Now, that could have been the work on the grid or not getting to the pit lane exit line in time. We'll keep you up to date with that as we get more info. Perez up to 13th on those soft tyres.
It might only be 8 and then 7 points for first and second, but that'll be a swap around of 2 between Russell and Antonelli. Every point is going to matter in this World Championship.
It's about George Russell making up for Miami with a perfect race weekend. It's about Antonelli keeping up his momentum. They are the two out in front in the World Championship, and it's half a second between the two Mercedes, and they are now 2.5 seconds clear of Lando Norris in third, then Hamilton still, then Piastri, and Antonelli once again towards the end of the lap closing in on George Russell.
He's getting a nice slipstream from George Russell. Ahead of him is Kimi Antonelli, but also then he will be into the overtake zone. That means he can keep top speed longer and harvest another half a megajoule of power. So, and Russell out front, punching a lovely hole in the air. So unless it's hurting Antonelli's tyres, he can just sit there.
Absolutely. You see the harvesting that's going on as the brakes are applied into the chicane on George Russell's Mercedes. Same going on with Kimi Antonelli. And with that extra half a megajoule, what can he do down the back straight this time around to try and get on terms with his teammates? Needs a decent exit. Not too much wheel spin. Now he can pick up the slipstream and the toe and use a little bit more battery boost. Meanwhile, Hülkenberg gaining on Fernando Alonso just ahead of him. Alonso up into 14th. The active aero on both Mercedes cars slams shut, and they take that corner still with Russell in the lead.
Yeah, Mercedes are miles quicker than the rest of the pack. When you look at it in Formula One terms, we're talking 3-4 tenths of a second per lap at this phase.
Nico Hülkenberg picks off his man, takes Fernando Alonso before they get into that final chicane. New Audi engine for this year, new Honda engine for this year, and the Audi power accelerating Hülkenberg past. A very good getaway there, Martin, from George Russell.
What a turnaround. Russell had the best start of anybody in the top 10 there.
Antonelli, for one moment, thought he might have been a bit under pressure. Certainly Lando Norris was under pressure, and very much Oscar Piastri as Hamilton sweeps past.
Yeah, Hamilton knew where to place his car. He's been around here enough times, we're now going to see that. So yeah, they get away. They're really fine-tuning this. They're almost in unison, weren't they? So now Hamilton's got the inside line for one. I was then able to try to overlap Norris and get good drive, because he ends up on the outside of turn 3, and that's enough for better traction and a position.
On board with Alex Albon further down the pecking order. Car ahead of him is Valtteri Bottas in the Cadillac, and he isn't ahead for very much longer. That is a neat move there by Alex Albon as they cross the line. The front two separated by 0.4 of a second, and the advantage now 3 seconds from Antonelli to Norris.
This Mercedes upgrade, that's been super powerful, hasn't it? They're still 4/10 of a second faster. They're gapping the pack. It's immense. But Antonelli is not going to make it easy for Russell. If he breezes past, you've almost want to be second going into the last lap. We'll see how this plays out. If they're going to start leapfrogging each other, but at the moment, George Russell desperately trying to hang on to that lead.
Could be a bit cat and mouse. Liam Lawson has picked off Fernando Alonso. Isaac Hadjar kind of on his own now in 11th place.
Engine problem.
And I didn't want to.
Okay, we're investigating.
I didn't want to say too much too soon, but he's definitely lost touch with those ahead of him.
Keep an eye on this because Russell was a little bit wide in the hairpin. That makes you slow off the corner, and it's put Antonelli right onto his gearbox.
It's as close as Antonelli has been in this race so far, and he pulls out to try and go wheel to wheel through that chicane. George Russell manages to fend him off, but can he fend him off now down this main straight? And this could be a perfect opportunity for Antonelli to try and strike. Into the first corner we go, and on the inside, Antonelli gets ahead, forces, goes off the track. George Russell manages to keep that lead, but that was two Mercedes getting way too close for comfort as far as the team are concerned.
Yeah, great racing. Russell read it beautifully because he just hit the brakes and then ducked underneath, and it was so important, otherwise they'd have made contact. But so yeah, this is the point I was trying to make. You might be better in second place towards the end of this race.
So here's Antonelli now, was looking down the inside, switches to the outside, and then has to go and go off, and off again, Antonelli, and that one was an awful lot worse and a lot bumpier, and that's going to slow him down, and he's going to lose a place to Lando Norris, and the skirmish is going on, and that has really affected Kimi Antonelli's race.
That was very naughty.
He's not a happy boy at all with his teammate George Russell, who continues to lead. But now, from Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton still ahead of Piastri and trying to gain on Kimi Antonelli.
Well, we've just witnessed it. We've all just witnessed the beginning of a whole new phase at Mercedes-Benz Formula One.
That's the muscles of Russell's and the elbows very much being got out here in Montreal. Russell leads lap 7 of 23. And they were just unwrapping the tyres there, just in case there was a puncture or something wrong on Kimi Antonelli's car.
Or if he's damaged the nose or whatever. Now Antonelli is under pressure from Lewis Hamilton as well. So we haven't seen the incident yet. I'm going to assume George gave him a fairly big squeeze heading down there into turn 8.
Oh, Mercedes, famous for allowing both drivers to race.
That will be a penalty. I was alongside the hero.
So let's just keep it cool.
Thing is, who's going to protest that one? Is one side of the garage going to say to the race director, come on, that needs to be a penalty?
That's the criteria. If you're alongside the mirror with your front axle, that's when you're on the inside. When you're on the outside, you have to have your front axles in line, your front tyres in line. We don't know whether it was an inside or an outside yet, do we? Because we haven't seen it.
Under investigation, Lance Stroll for that starting procedure infringement.
Let's just get this back under control, Kimi. Focus on Norris. Focus on the driving.
I don't care. He put me out.
Under guidance, Kimi Antonelli, and getting a little bit more irritated, Kimi Antonelli. Colapinto gets ahead of Carlos Sainz, Gasly ahead of Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, Antonelli will get out of the car and realise he's making a mistake here. Pete Bonington, with all of his wisdom, is desperately trying to calm him down, get him refocused on the job, because if you drive angry, you're more likely to go sideways or backwards than you are forwards. It never makes you go forwards more quickly if you're driving angry.
Can we concentrate on the driving, please, and not on the radio morning?
Wow. Toto Wolff getting involved on lap 8 here to keep his young charge just a little bit cooler than he is at the moment.
Yeah, they realised he was spiralling there, and he's a teenager at the end of the day, and not the teenager spiral, but, you know, he's under an immense amount of pressure driving this Formula 1 car. He's leading the World Championship, and his head just spiral for a moment.
Right, let's have a little look. Turn 1, Antonelli tries to go around the outside. He's not given any room by George Russell. I don't think he was alongside him enough to warrant that room there, but this next one, whoa, he was arriving hot into the scene of this chicane.
Well, that looks to me like he just outbraked himself, but so we need to see an off-board angle there. It's really hard from that.
Isaac Hadjar out of the race. We heard engine problems and a loss of power, and he's been retired by Red Bull from this sprint race, which is hotting up rather nicely, because now Lando Norris is in second place. That McLaren seems to be coming alive a little bit. George Russell, who might have thought, I can just pull away here because it's not my teammate behind me, might have to think again. No further action. Stewards against Lance Stroll. Lando Norris keeping within a second of George Russell.
Yes, so have Mercedes then been been heating up. You can use the brake, you can use devices to heat the front tyres. And is that going to start hurting them in the second phase? Because yes, that 4/10 advantage I kept talking about suddenly has evaporated. Karun.
They're telling George that the front tyre temperatures are still too cold. He's not got enough front temperature, Martin, and that's why he's struggling with front grip. Lando, in the meanwhile, is being given really good advice in terms of the energy deployment in overtaking mode by Will Joseph.
And Lewis Hamilton is now gaining on Kimi Antonelli. He's taken a few car lengths out of Antonelli's advantage on the last lap, and he might just for 1 second have thought, I could lunge down the inside here. Thought better of it, but look at the way that Mercedes is squirreling around trying to get under traction.
Yeah, they've really hurt these tyres, these medium compound tyres, with whatever strategy they've got on them, because they're fading quickly.
They certainly are. Liam Lawson, meanwhile, has Nico Hulkenberg in his sights as he tries to make his move up into 12th. Franco Colapinto, that's Hamilton going off into the dirt a little bit, by the way. Lindblad is the final points place at the moment. Verstappen ahead of him, Leclerc ahead of him, Piastri ahead of him. They're not really in contention, but Hamilton's right on the back of Antonelli for a third place finish, maybe. And Lando Norris is very much keeping George Russell honest here, as Isaac Hadjar comes back out into the race again. So whatever they found with the engine, a quick control alt delete might have sorted the problem.
Yeah, a sensor issue or something they were able to bypass. Anyway, he's back in the race. They'll be able to learn something for qualifying and tomorrow's Grand Prix, of course. And Lewis is really alive. We talked about it yesterday. He said, this is the best I've felt for a while in a car. He really is flourishing around here and in that Ferrari this weekend. He just really looks happy and on top, and he's pushing the limits, kicking up the dust, cars moving around, and he's just pinning it.
Well, maybe that lack of simulator preparation has rejuvenated Lewis Hamilton somewhat. An awful lot going on here in this race, a lot centred around Kimi Antonelli. I wonder, did he think George Russell was a bit too naughty at turn 1?
Yeah.
That's when he lost his head, and that's when he arrived steaming into the chicane a bit later on.
Possibly, because but on the outside of turn 1, he needed to have his front wheel alongside. It was not his mirror. And George then was not obliged to give him racing room.
Certainly from the angle we saw, that was the case. Lewis Hamilton taking a very different line around the hairpin there than we've seen so far this weekend from him.
Now, this is interesting with regard to tomorrow's race, because it does seem on the longer runs that McLaren are very fast. But Antonelli now, new fastest race lap of the race too.
And look how, with overtake mode available, Lando Norris is still keeping within a few car lengths of George Russell. Quickly down to the pit wall, Bernie Collins.
Yes, Crofty, I was just going to pick up on that I think the delta between the two Mercedes, when Kimi Antonelli had overtake mode, now after leaving the pit lane, looked to me like he wasn't getting any battery deployment before he came in.
Delta being the difference, but Russell did a 1:49 on the previous lap. That was right back to P7 before you find somebody going as slow as that, relatively speaking. But so whether he made a mistake, I don't know, but it's brought Norris right into play.
And Kimi Antonelli, with the fastest lap of the race, is slowly but surely edging his way back into contention too, and he's only 1.5 seconds behind his teammate, with Lando Norris stuck in the middle in the McLaren. We've finished lap 12, we start lap 13. George Russell leads by 0.3 of a second as they cross the line.
Now Russell a 15.0, and that means that Norris behind him was nailed onto a 15. You know, Russell is struggling for raw pace out front now. All of that early speed has evaporated. They're using something too hard or not hard enough, we'll find out afterwards. But that is going to bring Antonelli, Hamilton and Piastri right into the action.
Monitoring tyres at race control, Karun Chandok.
Yeah, Russell complained about graining on the rear left. There's a, you can see the band on the tyre there, on the inside shoulder. They've just had a bit of chat on the radio about that. So he is struggling with front grip with cooler temperatures. They haven't clearly got the target right, but also with that rear graining.
And track temperature round about 14 degrees, I think, cooler than it was yesterday for qualifying, and it might change around again tomorrow with the rain expected to come into Montreal. There's the top three: Russell, Norris, Antonelli, separated by 1.7 seconds.
Russell got a really good drive, really good traction out of the hairpin that time. He's obviously starting to manage whatever his problems are better. He's understanding what he's got to do, but let's see what this lap time is as they come over the line. It's a 14.8, 14.8. Antonelli 14.9 behind them. So they're yo-yoing around a little bit. And you just sense that Russell's hanging on to the lead here rather than dominating it.
If they've got any sense, they'll give him as much boost as they possibly can down that long back straight to protect him, and then say, George, it's up to your skill to try and protect yourself elsewhere on the lap. Meanwhile, while all that's happening, Charles Leclerc in the last couple of laps has been gaining on Oscar Piastri in the battle for 5th place, and Piastri might find himself under a bit of pressure soon too in the other McLaren. Max Verstappen, couple of tenths off the pace, and a penny for Andrea Stella's thoughts here. I'm sure he's enjoying it, and I'm sure he's enjoying seeing his team become a little bit more competitive today against Mercedes than they were yesterday, but he knows that one of his drivers, if not both here, are going to be under pressure, defending soon the places they currently occupy, which is 2nd and 5th.
Yeah, George Russell could well do with his teammate to come along and and start attacking Lando Norris, couldn't he? Because
track and gaining an advantage. Russell's advantage 1 second as he crossed the line. That could be important here if Lando can't stay within 1 that was 0.7 of a second faster than Lando.
this is where Russell, if he has got damage to his rear tyre, he's a little bit wider than he has been in the previous couple of laps.
So let's see what happens. There is into the pits comes car number 23, Alex Albon, for a change of tyres. Soft tyres going on, and they're using this as a test session. Are Williams, Russell, Norris, Antonelli separated by round about a second into the chicane. Hamilton, Piastri, Leclerc separated by about the same 1 second. The battle for the top three and the battle for 4, 5 and 6 as close as you would love it here in Montreal.
And Hamilton had to get a little bit defensive there against Piastri into the final chicane.
Best form of defence, Martin, attack. That's what they always say. Karun at race control.
Keep an eye on Norris, Crofty, over the next couple of laps. They've given him some changes in terms of the energy strategy and said, we're going to use the opportunity to boost out of turn 10 when it matters. So just keep an eye. Maybe he's just topping up the pack for a couple of laps and then attacking at a key moment.
Lewis Hamilton kicking up the dust once again, and using the extremities of the track to his advantage. Piastri has just dropped back a little bit behind Hamilton on this particular lap. We've only got about 7 laps to go of this sprint race, which is absorbing and could yet build up into a grandstand finish with plenty of action so far, if not massive amount of overtaking. Russell's advantage, 0.8 of a second currently, same 0.8 between Norris and Antonelli as Fernando Alonso comes into the pits for a change of tyres, I would imagine, and he's back out again.
So they're just coming up to lap Alex Albon, haven't they, who's out on those soft compound tyres in his Williams. He will be obliged to move out of the way, but such a tight confines, for example, through turn 4, 6 and 7, it's not actually that easy to get out of the way here now. So it's normally the leader who suffers most in this situation, where they come along and sort of have to move out of the way, wake up anybody they're going to lap.
Sergio Perez running 12th for Cadillac, which will be their best finish of the season in any format if he can hold on to that. But he's got Liam Lawson right behind him. Lawson, who could have started from the pit lane, didn't take part in qualifying, started from the grid and went from plumb last to 18th before, or 17th before he even turned a wheel. And elsewhere, a few pit stops affecting the lower order, but Lawson's still on the charge. And George Russell has led this race from the outset and has been under pressure more than I think he would have expected. First from Kimi Antonelli, now from Lando Norris. Alex Albon is looking in his mirrors and thinking, right, when do I keep out of the way here? And they didn't quite catch the back marker before that. Alex Albon is looking in his mirrors and thinking, right, when do I keep out of the way here? And they didn't quite catch the back marker before that chicane, which will be good news if you're Lando Norris and not so good news, I think, if you're George Russell.
That's what he's doing. It's just a bit of a road.
Yeah, I don't think Alex was unduly kind there, to be honest. I think he could have eased off halfway down that straight and let them through, but that's packed them up a little bit closer, hasn't it?
But it certainly has, just by a couple of tenths of a second, couple of car lengths as well, makes a huge difference. Another pit stop for Fernando Alonso. They're curing the tyres down at Aston Martin, getting them ready for qualifying later, putting a heat cycle through them, which they think makes the tyres a bit more robust when it comes to qualifying. Meanwhile, Oscar Piastri trying to gain on Lewis Hamilton. Charles Leclerc's dropped back a bit behind Piastri. Points, by the way, down to 8th here. Arvid Lindblad about to pick up a point if Franco Colapinto can't catch him, and Colapinto is faster on the track.
This is frantic up front now. They're really pushing the limits. George there was wildly sliding sideways coming out of turn 8. And these points, as I said earlier on, these points are critical for this World Championship. And Lando, desperately trying to recover his season a bit too, is right in there. This bodes so well for tomorrow's Grand Prix.
Absolutely. Tyres cured. Fernando Alonso's in the garage. There's George Russell. Cross the line, his advantage half a second over Lando Norris, half a second back to Kimi Antonelli, the championship leader, who's going to lose a couple of points at this rate to his teammate. But does he save everything? You know, it used to be last lap Lando. Is it last lap Antonelli as far as we're concerned here in Montreal? Has Lando Norris got anything up his sleeve to put George Russell under pressure? Can Russell hang on for what would be a second consecutive win here on the Ile Notre Dame? All to play for in the top 3, who are separated by 1.1 second as they cross the line to end lap 18.
Top 6 are all lapping pretty much identical times around the 1:15.0. But in clear air again now that George Russell has navigated past the Williams of Alex Albon. He's just eking out a little bit more of a gap again.
Max Verstappen's been noted for a yellow flag infringement down at turn 2. That might be being looked at by the stewards in a moment. We'll keep you noted. Behrman's into the pits. There go our top 3, and then closely followed by 4, 5 and 6 as well, having their own epic scrap. Normally we'd be featuring that at this stage of the race, but the top 3 are so close. You can't turn away from this, can you? George Russell actually pulled out an advantage by a couple of tenths over Lando Norris on lap 19. Kimi Antonelli was about a tenth of a second faster. Is there a way through for Antonelli to make it a Mercedes 1-2?
If Russell gets more than a second ahead of Norris going into the final chicane, Norris drops out of the overtake, but Antonelli will still have it.
Yeah.
And so as Hülkenberg gets a 10-second penalty for leaving the track, gaining an advantage earlier on in the race. So it's critical for Norris to stay within a second of Russell here. Otherwise, he really will find himself under pressure in the closing stages.
Now, Valtteri Bottas, back marker. Lance Stroll ahead of him. Gasly comes into the pits. And I don't know why we're necessarily watching Gasly in the pits here, because down that back straight, there go our top 3. That's a bit more like it. Bottas does keep out of the way. Stroll, though, still ahead as a back marker on the track from our race leader. You don't often get back markers in sprint races, but we had so many starting from the pit lane. I'm not surprised today. Oh, and that was Lewis Hamilton ahead of Oscar Piastri, getting very, very close to the wall of champions. That looked like, you know, millimetres between Hamilton's rear right tyre and the wall. It certainly was a bit closer for comfort than Hamilton would have liked. As the gap now 0.7 of a second. Russell to Norris, 0.8 back to Antonelli. And Hamilton says, I did hit the wall in the last corner. Brushed it, got away with it, Martin.
He did. He definitely did. You can do that as long as the car's nice and square when you go up against the wall. We just saw Lando Norris with a wild rear slide. Let's have a look as Piastri's attacking. And Lewis then probably took a bit more speed in than he ideally wanted.
Bang.
Yeah, that was a reason. That was more than a touch, wasn't it? But the suspension's pretty robust. He should be all right doing that.
He hasn't lost any time in the first sector to Piastri on this lap. He lost a 10th in the middle sector, Lewis Hamilton, on this lap. We can ride on board with Oscar Piastri and we can keep tabs on the top three as through they go once again. Past that wall of champions, no further investigation. Max Verstappen, who's down in 7th place and picking up a couple of points. Started 7th, about to finish 7th. Hamilton says the car looks good. He needs to look at his mirrors too, because here comes Oscar Piastri down towards turn 1 and the McLaren right behind the Ferrari here. This is going to be one hell of a last lap.
It's been great, hasn't it? It's been real. First time we've had a sprint race here in Canada, and it's certainly in the top 10. I mean, the second half the field are using it for tyre practice and all sorts of things, but because they know they're not going to get any points in the top 8. But this lot have been going at it flat out from the first corner, haven't they? And as I said, this boat's really well for tomorrow's race.
So down to the hairpin once more. Graining issues on straight. He once had DRS, now he's got electrical power to try and get him on terms, and he goes through that final chicane about 2 car lengths behind. Lando might just have got away with that lockup, that slight lockup into the hairpin, but it has certainly cost him in terms of trying to get into the lead as Antonelli makes the move, but overshoots the corner. He'll have to give the place back.
Piastri overtook Hamilton as well in all of this, but yeah, he has to give that place back. Antonelli has given that place back, and Piastri up to 4th.
So Antonelli went for it into the first corner as we started the final lap, and once again pays the price by being a little bit too hot going into the turn. Piastri is not just ahead of Hamilton, he's ahead of Leclerc as well. Meanwhile, Lawson and Perez are under investigation for forcing a driver off the track, and George Russell now leads by about 1.5 seconds, approaching the hairpin. For once, he might be able to breathe a bit more easily down the back straight.
Yeah, and whatever happened with Piastri and Hamilton, Leclerc got through as well to take P5. That's why that positioning is as it is at the moment.
So George Russell, wow, has he had a race here. Starting from pole, thinking, right, now's my opportunity to make a mark here. My teammates had all the momentum recently. In this sprint race, I'm going to make it mine. And he has made it his. George Russell, for the 2nd year here in Montreal, crosses the line, reaches the flag and wins. This time it is the sprint. Lando Norris ahead of Kimi Antonelli to take 2nd place, with Antonelli 3rd, and then Piastri to the line under pressure from Charles Leclerc, and just a car length in it as he takes 4th ahead of Leclerc in 5th and Hamilton in 6th. Verstappen will finish 7th. Lawson still pushing hard behind Sergio Perez, who's up in 11th place at the moment. This has been a great race for Sergio Perez. Arvid Lindblad has just crossed the line now to take the final points position. Then Franco Colapinto and Carlos Sainz, who completes a top 10 finish. Under investigation, as I said, Perez and Lawson. There is the racing bull of Liam Lawson. Behind him, Bortoletto and Hulkenberg, and he's under investigation. Hulkenberg as well. So they're going to race right to the finish here. Perez to cross the line for Cadillac, That's a super 11th place for the new team in Formula One. Lawson finishes 12th, Bortoleto, Hulkenberg, then will come Ocon ahead of Hulkenberg, who's got that penalty. Stroll and Bottas, Behrman and Albon, Gasly, Hadjar and Alonso, who was out.
Nice work today. Good job.
Lando was quick there. Yeah, good job.
Right, he's got his gloves on in the car, Martin. Gloves off at Mercedes in terms of the battle.
Yeah, it was going to happen, wasn't it? Inevitable. But Kimi had too many adventures in that race and lost his head a little bit. He'll learn from that, and he'll learn quickly. That's what we're finding out with that young man.
Let's check the flag.
Yeah, if we need to race like this, then good to know.